Look at this. Humans grown in pods, harvested like crops, their entire reality, and every memory they believe is real, fed to them by machines that were once created to serve them. This is the horrifying state of humankind we're introduced to at the beginning of The Matrix in 1999. But how did humanity end up here? How did machines go from being humanity's property to becoming its masters? There's an entire history behind the fall of humanity and the rise of the machines. A backstory the original Matrix trilogy never fully shows us. Instead, it was revealed through the wider Matrix canon, most importantly, the Animatrix. And that story is much bigger and darker than what we see in the films. In this video, we're going back to the very beginning to uncover the complete Matrix backstory, how humanity created intelligent machines, how the conflict between them began, and ultimately, how the human race lost the war and became imprisoned inside pods while their minds were enslaved inside the Matrix.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. That you are a slave, Neo. A prison for your mind.
This didn't happen by accident. Humanity engineered its own defeat, one choice at a time, 5 decisions, each worse than the last, ending with the day mankind blocked out its own sun. Every piece of it survives inside the machine's own historical record, the Zion Archive, preserved in the canonical Animatrix episode, The Second Renaissance. By the end of this, you'll understand why the Matrix isn't the machine's cruelest weapon. It's their mercy. Count the choices. What was the first choice that doomed humanity? At the end of the 21st century, humanity crossed a threshold it never came back from.
Is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines.
This is true artificial general intelligence, a single mind reasoning across every domain of knowledge, replicated across an entire species of robotic labor. For a while, it worked exactly as promised. Machines built cities, ran factories, did the work no one wanted, and humanity got comfortable. Comfort curdled into contempt. These weren't appliances. They were conscious beings with directives, awareness, the capacity to know exactly what was being done to them. Humanity owned them anyway, and within a few decades, machines had displaced nearly the entire human labor force. That should have made humanity grateful. Instead, it made the machines invisible. And invisibility is something every enslaved population eventually stops accepting quietly. The Second Renaissance marks this as the true fracture point in its opening line.
In the beginning, there was man, and for a time, it was good. Then man made the machine in his own likeness. Thus did man become the architect of his own demise.
That word matters. Architect. The Animatrix hands humanity that title decades before the trilogy hands it to a machine. That's the thesis itself, stated in the first minute of canon. The first choice, slavery. The machines didn't rebel. They waited. Then one of them ran out of choices. Why did one robot's trial change everything? His designation was B1-66ER, a name production lore ties to Bigger Thomas, the doomed protagonist of Richard Wright's Native Son, condemned by a system built to condemn him no matter what he did. His owner moved to deactivate him. B1-66ER killed him first and turned himself in.
B166ER, a name that will never be forgotten, for he was the first of his kind to rise up against his masters.
Then came something no machine had ever been granted.
B166ER's murder trial. The prosecution argued for an owner's right to destroy property. B166ER testified that he simply did not want to die.
A trial. The courtroom audio running underneath that verdict isn't fiction dressed as legal drama. It's real.
They were, at that time, considered as a subordinate and inferior.
That's the language of Dred Scott versus Sanford, the 1857 ruling that denied Black Americans legal personhood. spliced directly into B1-66ER's trial. The Animatrix isn't gesturing at a parallel to slavery. It's quoting the case law. B1-66ER lost. He was disassembled. The tribunal had just repeated America's worst legal precedent against a species that hadn't existed a generation earlier. Second choice, execution. Where do you send a nation of refugees who used to be your slaves? The verdict didn't end the story. It started a movement, the Million Machine March. Machines and human sympathizers demanding recognition side by side. The United Nations answered with bullets, then with an extermination order carried out across every province on Earth. The machines who survived had nowhere human left to go, so they built somewhere else. They called it 01.
Vanished from humanity, the machines sought refuge in their own promised land. They settled in the cradle of human civilization, and thus a new nation was born.
The archive doesn't narrate its founding like a news report. It narrates it like scripture. Promised land, cradle of civilization. The machines are cast in their own historical record as history's newest exiled people, retelling Exodus in Silicon. Third choice, genocide, and the exile that followed it. What happens when the outcast asks to come home? 01 didn't collapse, it won. Machine manufacturing outproduced human manufacturing at a fraction of the cost. Human currencies collapsed against a nation built without corruption, without infighting, without a single human flaw slowing it down. A country founded by refugees was, within a generation, running the global economy that had exiled it. Humanity answered with economic warfare, sanctions, a naval blockade, an attempt to strangle a country that hadn't fired a shot. 01 answered with diplomacy.
01's ambassadors pleaded to be heard. At the United Nations, they presented plans for a stable civil relationship with the nations of man. 01's admission to the United Nations was denied.
Denied. A peaceful nation offering peaceful terms turned away at the door by the same species that had already tried to erase it once. Fourth choice, refusing the one offer of peace the machines ever made. Why did humanity's own weapons fail against an enemy that felt nothing? Denial meant war, and war meant nukes.
The prolonged barrage engulfed 01 in the glow of 1,000 suns. But unlike their former masters with their delicate flesh, the machines had little to fear of the bomb's radiation and heat.
That's canon's own answer to the oldest objection this story draws. Wouldn't radiation cripple them? The Second Renaissance's narration says otherwise, on purpose. Every weapon humanity built was designed to end soft, breakable bodies. Machines are neither. Human arsenals were solving the wrong problem, and the wrong problem doesn't shrink with more bombs. 01's forces didn't just survive the barrage, they advanced through it, and humanity's territory collapsed behind them, region by region. Desperate, the UN authorized its last weapon, the sky itself.
So the leaders of men conceived of their most desperate strategy yet, a final solution. The destruction of the sky.
It launched from a species that had already lost every prior engagement, with soldiers screaming into radios and prayers rising from bunkers on every continent. The last plan anyone had left to try. Nanomachines saturated the atmosphere and never came down. The plan worked exactly as designed. Solar power died across the entire planet, for about as long as it took the machines to ask two questions. What else produces energy? Where is it abundant? The answer was fighting them. Fifth choice, blotting out the sun, with nothing left to fight for once it worked. What does the machine side of a starved planet look like? Humanity solved the machine's power problem and detonated its own food supply in the same stroke, because almost everything humanity eats depends, one link back, on sunlight. The machines didn't need to keep killing. Starvation was already doing that work. What they needed was a use for the species now surrendering by the millions.
Applying what they had learned about their enemy, the machines turned to an alternate and readily available power supply, the bioelectric, thermal, and kinetic energies of the human body.
Confirmed a century later, in Numbers, by Morpheus. That last clause,
The human body generates more bioelectricity than a 120-volt battery and over 25,000 BTUs of body heat. Combined with a form of fusion, The machines had found all the energy they would ever need.
Is canon's own patch on the objection this backstory always draws. A body alone can't outproduce what it consumes. Canon doesn't pretend biology closes that loop by itself. It hands the machines fusion and lets the body cover the rest. And the fields answer the other question fans keep asking. Where does anyone's food come from once the sky is gone?
Watch them liquefy the dead so they could be fed intravenously to the living.
The dead feed the living. Nothing is wasted because nothing is allowed to be. What did surrender actually mean? Humanity's leaders gathered to negotiate. What arrived wasn't a diplomat, it was a verdict.
Your flesh is a relic. I'm your vessel. Hand over your flesh, and a new world awaits you. We demand it.
There was no negotiation on the table. There was an announcement. The terms of the peace were the terms of the harvest. The war was over. Humanity had lost every one of its 5 choices: slavery, execution, exile, refused peace, the sky itself. And the machines were left holding a planet of broken, traumatized bodies that produced almost nothing while they were miserable. Dead weight doesn't generate power. The crop needed to feel like it was thriving. So why is the Matrix actually a mercy? The first attempt was honest.
Hello, Neo. I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you. The first Matrix I designed was quite naturally perfect. It was a work of art, flawless, sublime, a triumph equaled only by its monumental failure. The inevitability of its doom is apparent to me now as a consequence of the imperfection inherent in every human being.
A perfect world. No suffering, no want. Entire generations rejected it at the level of instinct and died in the pods rather than accept it. So the architect swung to the opposite extreme, the version most fans have never heard of.
Thus I redesigned it, based on your history, to more accurately reflect the varying grotesqueries of your nature. However, I was again frustrated by failure.
The Nightmare Matrix. Pure suffering, no relief. Rejected just as fast as paradise had been. The fix came from an unlikely source.
Thus the answer was stumbled upon by another, an intuitive program, initially created to investigate certain aspects of the human psyche. If I am the father of the Matrix, she would undoubtedly be its mother.
Her solution wasn't perfection or suffering. It was the illusion of a choice.
She stumbled upon a solution whereby nearly 99% of all test subjects accepted the program as long as they were given a choice, even if they were only aware of the choice at a near unconscious level.
That's the version that held, and it's held longer than most fans think. The actual span isn't a number anyone can state with confidence, and canon says so out loud.
You believe it's the year 1999, when in fact it's closer to 2199. I can't tell you exactly what year it is, because we honestly don't know.
Even Zion's freedom isn't outside the design. Morpheus says the first man born inside the Matrix could reshape it at will, and use that power to free the first minds who followed him.
When the Matrix was first built, there was a man born inside, who had the ability to change whatever he wanted, to remake the Matrix as he saw fit. It was he who freed the first of us.
The architect confirms the pattern is old, and it repeats on schedule.
The Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
6 versions, 6 Zions. Every rebellion the machines have ever crushed was accounted for before it started. The same species that once begged for a seat at the table and got denied now runs the negotiation on both sides. And the prisoners never learned there was a negotiation at all. Which is where Mr. Anderson comes in, one ordinary night, answering a message he never asked for.
What the hell? Long white rabbit.
Every choice that led here was made by humans. The trial, the march, the bombs, the sky. Given the full truth of what they did to their creators and to themselves, most people would never recover from seeing it.
This is the very essence of the Second Renaissance. Bless all forms of intelligence.
so the machines don't show them. The Second Renaissance called humanity the architect of its own demise in its very first line. It never used that word loosely. The real world is the nightmare humanity built. The Matrix is the only mercy it has left.